even there, in the middle of nowhere, you'll be driving along and you'll see a Palestine flag fluttering in some lonely field. You'll see that stop signs on the road have had the word genocide attached to them, so it says stop genocide. You switch on local Galway radio and you will hear people talking about going on hunger strike for Gaza, or the evils of Israel, or why the Irish government is not doing enough to turn Israel into a pariah state, which is what these people think it is. It's suffocating. You can almost taste the hatred on your tongue when you walk through these towns and cities. I find it incredibly depressing that the Irish establishment in particular, but also significant numbers of Irish people, now devote themselves to this kind of ritualistic hatred for one country, the Jewish nation.
Before I get into my second Ireland-Israel essay, I want to make one point about this abomination, the Occupied Territories Bill that the Irish government are trying to pass. This will be the first law introduced in Europe impeding the sale of Jewish goods since the Nazis held power in 1933, when they organised a boycott of Jewish-owned businesses. Think about that for a moment. And think about the fact that our governing class here in Ireland have given recognition to a non-existent state or territory that is controlled by terrorists and murderers, in effect rewarding them for their evil. By doing that, we have now become complicit in that evil.
The moral superiority and the religion of how moral you are is the new religion in Ireland. And that is why thinking for yourself in Ireland now is a radical act. It is a radical act to speak freely, to talk about things that the media or the morality police, the people like Simon Harris believe in. To stand up against that, to not agree is a literal radical act now. Simon Harris and Micheál Martins and loads of other people in the political classes, in Labour or whatever, they're so certain of their rightness and their morality. It's impenetrable at this point. You can there'll be no convincing them. But I just think that people like Simon Harris have officially left the reservation. They are so far from the shore now. They have gotten so high on inhaling the fumes of moral superiority that they can't see the shore.
Some months ago, the conjecture in Ireland as to whether the Taoiseach would be invited to the White House or not by Donald Trump on St. Patrick's Day was aplenty. At the time, I wondered why we were seeing this and why it was even allowed to become an issue. Never in my lifetime had I heard of such ridiculous nonsense. It had always been a non-issue in the sense that the idea of it never previously existed in the Irish imagination, at least until it was placed and positioned there. It's something that would never have been on anyone's radar as a matter of course. Why would it be? We have always had a great relationship with the United States, regardless of whomever was in power, both here and in Washington. A significant portion of the US population claims some kind of Irish heritage, and there has always been a unique place in the American heart for Ireland and her diaspora. But of course, this was not taking into account the Micheál Martin factor and the childlike utterances of his colleague, Simon Harris, with his infamous 18 versions of COVID while holding the health minister portfolio. That statement alone should have cost him his position as health minister. But for those who are not aware, Ireland doesn't do resignations. Normally, a statement along the lines of "lessons will be learned" will suffice to escape that fate. It is even a get-out-of-jail card for a €2.5 billion overspend on a hospital that was only supposed to cost €800 million, now one of the most expensive buildings in human history, if not the most. Look at how low we sank with all this kerfuffle about a White House visit, with the Taoiseach window-licking for an invite, trying to find their way out of a mire that they themselves willfully walked into. At one point, the word from government was that those kind of invites are only arranged in the days immediately preceding March 17. But the fact that they were openly talking about it expose their concern, coupled with their PR machine continually engaged in a form of damage control. These kinds of situations are what transpire when you are ruled by children and clowns. There is no other explanation. It is the Dunning-Kruger effect on steroids and on full display. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the display of confidence or arrogance that far exceeds one's level of competence. In this case, an overestimation of their actual diplomatic abilities. These are weak individuals with weak political and social skills. They have little sense of mature diplomacy with their off-the-cuff utterances, compromising our international reputation and relationships, and in Martin's case, our long-held neutrality. It is a step up from Varadkar's Love Actually nonsense in Downing Street, and his usual embarrassing public faux pas. Conor McGregor was to eventually upstage Martin on St. Patrick's Day. Martin's neutrality-damaging position, taking a side in the Russian-Ukrainian war, thousands of miles away, over what could be classed as a border dispute, and consequently cutting off valuable Russian imports, such as reasonably priced diesel, was on another level. What's that all about? Martin and his gaggle of the inept have no self-control, no boundaries, and no restraint over themselves or what they utter in public. They really don't. It is the behaviour one would expect from a teenager, not fully grown men in international politics who fail to see the bigger picture, with little foresight for what might be coming, 5 or 10 years down the line. They fail to grasp that it is the Irish people that they are supposed to represent, and to project our good image to those nations with whom we interact with in the diplomatic arena. Our identity now seems to have been swallowed up by the interests of other entities, behemoths such as the EU or the UN, with us as a small nation being grafted into their agenda, or at least the agenda of the bigger players within those entities. Russia bad, Trump bad, and then there's Israel. What shame these incompetents have brought on this little island nation of ours. A nation that in times past preserved all the great European literature and writings, while the Visigoths rampaged throughout the continent, burning it all down. We are a nation who, through our Celtic Christian monks, brought the gospel, literature, and civilization back to the far reaches of Europe again, following that dark age. Our current rabble of reprobates seem to be more concerned about Gaza, the Ukraine, and importing as many unknowns and undesirables as possible than they are about our own country's misfortunes. They are utterly reckless and utterly wicked, such is their contempt for the Irish people. Don't be fooled by their sheepish words and appearance. They have no restraint and no boundaries. There is nothing they will not say or do for the reward of a proverbial pat on the head from those whose approval they continually seem to crave. They can't get enough of it. They live for it. They proved that during the COVID debacle. Now, let's look at what they have done to our relationship with Israel. The Embassy of Israel has on its landing page the following announcement. Quote, "As of Wednesday, the 18th of December 2024, there will be no consular services at the embassy." End of quote. You couldn't make this up. Dana Ehrlich, the former ambassador, now it looks like, was treated appallingly by the Irish establishment and media. A native Israeli lady of Argentinian origin who speaks 4 languages. The Irish political and media class can barely speak English, and when they do, it's usually Israel bad, Gaza good, and all the usual historically uninformed and political tropes that go along with it. Israel is at war, but in the eyes of the Irish establishment, it must not be allowed to win at any cost. It must, they believe, be forced into a draw or some kind of stalemate. Treating a democratic first world state like this is a disgrace. When that state reaches a point where it feels it has to shut down its embassy, such is the quarrelsome atmosphere here being waged against it. But this seems to be par for the course now under the rule of these incompetents in the Dáil and the adolescent miscreants in the media. We have had diplomatic relations with Israel since 1975, with full relations since 1994. Our growing trade links were valued at more than $5 billion in 2023. In Ambassador Ehrlich's statement from the 10th of December 2024 regarding anti-Semitism in Ireland, she writes the following, quote, "It seems that the government and opposition parties are competing with one another in terms of who can be the most anti-Israel, in their desire to pass the proposed Occupied Territories Bill." She continues, "The proposed bill is a discriminatory attempt that aims to target Israel, while ironically criminalising any Irish people who may fall foul of it, if implemented." End of quote. Incidentally, this anti-Israel bill, introduced by Senator Francis Black in 2018, is fully supported by NGOs such as Trócaire, among others. Naming this bill, the Occupied Territories Bill, in itself shows the ignorance of the Irish establishment and how it perpetuates the narrative of the anti-Israel lobby here and abroad. Those who use this politically motivated word occupied never mention the reasons behind it and go to great lengths to advance such a claim. They always forget to mention that none of these territories were sovereign states or part of any before the Arab-Israeli conflict of 1967, and only a recognised sovereign state can be acknowledged as being occupied. As such, these territories can only be labelled as disputed territories, arising out of the aggressive actions of Israel's neighbours in 1967, affirmed by UN Resolution 242 that followed the conflict. Any disputes would have to be resolved by peace negotiations, which the Arabs have never partaken in. Making a claim that any occupation, regardless of the reasons behind it and its continued existence, is illegal is not in harmony with the principles of international law. The international legal system does not outlaw occupation, it merely regulates it, and any claims to the contrary are purely politically motivated. The concept that some in the Irish establishment slavishly perpetuate, that Jewish people are foreign colonisers in a land to which they have no connection, is a blatant falsehood. Their connection to their homeland goes back 4,000 years. The real myth is that a Palestinian state existed in this place prior to the establishment of the modern state of Israel on May the 14th, 1948. Within 8 hours of this declaration, on May 15th, Israel was attacked by the surrounding Arab states, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, whom Israel then went on to defeat with very limited resources, signing an armistice in 1949. The Arabs started the war and they lost. This has been the recurring pattern: 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973, and now October the 7th. And yet, we are continually told that they, the Arabs, are the victims. Let's be clear. No Arab or Palestinian state ever existed in the area known as Palestine. Yet the Irish political class still bulldoze ahead and give recognition to such a state in 2024, a land governed by terrorists, while Israel, a democratic state, is in the middle of conducting a war that it did not start. This is the stuff of a student union fact-deaf committee. It is a classic example of the Irish political class trying to wedge itself into a matter that does not concern them, for the want of some kind of relevance, and to preserve their own ideological delusions of grandeur or gravitas. They are the true useful idiots of this political generation, the dictionary definition of the Dunning-Kruger effect. As for Donald Trump and Micheál Martin's social anxiety about not being invited to the White House, we had to watch that play out. I've always believed that Donald Trump is a gracious man behind it all and would extend an olive branch. He is clever. He invited Martin for March the 12th, 1 week before Patrick's Day, thus making his point by denying him a March 17 appointment. He humbled Martin while at the same time helped him save undeserved face. Had he not invited him at all, it would have been well deserved. However, one thing is certain, of course. No lessons will be learned by Ireland's political incompetence. The fact deaf never learn.
These people take the moral high ground, Sarah, and they are deeply immoral. It is immoral when your country has people in it who can't afford their own electricity bill, which in the Western world, okay, maybe electricity is a luxury in the Horn of Africa. I take that point. We're lucky to have it at all. I get that. But in the Western world, it's a functional necessity to exist. And we've got families in this country who can't afford it. We've got parents who need to send their kids to school who cannot send their kids to school. We've got people out there who can't get homes, and you've got agencies of the state proposing to knock them down. And you're spending your fucking time talking to Agnes Callamard of Amnesty International about third world human rights issues around the world. Do your jobs. Like, this is what people talk to me when I talk about the Occupied Territories Bill and the waste of time of all that is. People get annoyed and say I'm pro-Israeli. No, I'm pro-Irish. I want a country that's politicians actually focus on the problems in this country, do the things that they were elected to do, make people's lives better. And what do we get? We get a pair of fucking prancing pricks. I'm actually losing my temper in a way I never should on this podcast. Going around the world trying to augment their books and bid an audition for a Nobel Peace Prize that is never going to come because the rest of the world can see through their bullshit.